Hoy vamos a mirar la gramática 8.2 que empieza en la página 277 y va a la página 278. Entonces 277 y 278 si ustedes quieren usar el libro de texto. Como siempre, vamos a comenzar esta lección o esta lectura con el PowerPoint, ¿no? So I'll go into English now. So let's just see what it says here. En lecciones 5 and 6, you learned that direct and indirect object pronouns replace nouns and that they often refer to nouns that have already been referenced. You will now learn how to use direct and indirect object pronouns together. So we haven't done that before. Before we were saying, I gave it to Mary, right? Or I gave her, I gave her the book, right? But now we want to say I gave it to her, right? So the it referring back to the book and then her referring back to Mary, okay? So the way that we do this, here's a quick recap on indirect object pronouns. So we have me, te, le, nos, and les. We don't do the os. And then direct object pronouns, lo, la, los, or las. Okay? You see these say in parentheses, and that will make more sense in just a minute. All right, so when direct and indirect object pronouns are used together, the indirect object pronouns always precedes the direct object pronoun. In other words, it goes in front of. So let's look at a few examples here. La camarera me muestra el menú. All right, so here's the indirect object, here's the direct object. So now we want to say the waitress shows it to me. So we say la camarera me lo muestra. Right, so the me stays in the same place. And the lo, which is referring to el menú, goes in between the indirect and the verb, okay? Let's look at another example. Nos sirven los platos, right? You see the indirect and direct. Nos los sirven. So the los referring back to los platos. All right, another example. Maribel te pidió una hamburguesa. Right, here's the direct. So Maribel te la pidió. The la, of course, referring back to una hamburguesa. Here's a few examples. ¿Quién te los dio? We don't really know what the los is referring here to, but it doesn't really matter. Me los compró un chico muy guapo. But he could be referring to any number of things here. Está bien. All right, so in Spanish, two pronouns that begin with the letter el, that's an L, right, cannot be used together. Therefore, the indirect object pronoun le and les changes to se when it's presented with lo, las, lo, los, la, and las. So that's that's why we saw the se here in parentheses, okay? So we'll see some examples here. So here we have the indirect le escribí la carta. Here's the direct. Now we want to put those together. I wrote it to him. Se la escribí. So that le here turns into se. Because in Spanish, the rule says that you can't have le with a lo, los, la, and las, okay? So you'd be tempted to say le la escribí, but Spanish doesn't allow that, so the le turns into a se. Here's another example. Les sirvió los sándwiches, all right? Se los sirvió, right? So this les here turns into a se. That's just the rule. That's how it goes. And because se has so many meanings, right, often you tag on the a usted, a él, a ella, a ustedes, a ellos, or a ellas, right, so there's no ambiguity. So let's see a few examples. El sombrero Carlos se lo vendió a ella. So that a ella goes with se, right? Las verduras, ellos se las compran a ustedes. So the se goes with a ustedes. So this originally would be les, right? And this over here, this originally would be le. But because of the rule, you can't have lelo and you can't have les las. The le here turns to se and the les here turns to se as well. Vale? I know it seems complicated, but it's just with a little bit of practice, it actually, you see the pattern, all right? So double object pronouns are placed before conjugated verb, like all the examples we just saw. but when there's an infinitive or a present participle, you can place them before or after. Remember that if you place it after, though, you have to put an accent mark on it, like in this example. Voy a mostrártelo with an accent mark. But you can also just say, te lo voy a mostrar. Or here you could say, nos las están comprando, or están comprándonoslas, right, with an accent here. Like I've told you before in class, you can just kind of pick one that you want to use. Students usually opt for this one. That way they don't have to deal with accent marks, right? And that's fine. But you do want to be comfortable with at least knowing that the two exist. And you may have some activities where you have to do both. I'm not really sure. But we can deal with that as it comes. Here's a few examples. Mi abuelo me lo está leyendo, or mi abuelo está leyéndomelo. All right, so they both mean the same thing. El camarero se los va a servir, or el camarero va a servírselos. Right? The only difference is when you plug them or when you attach them to the back, you have to put these accent marks. Okay, muy bien. I already talked about the accent. We just talked about that, and that's it. All right, so let's do a few activities here. I'm going to close this PowerPoint, but like I said, if you want to follow in on your book, we're on page 279, okay? And we're going to do two activities. We're going to do activity 1 and activity 2 here. And as always, right, I'm going to, you can pause it as you think about the answer before I give it, all right? All right, so let's read the instructions. Responder. Trabajas de compañero o compañero en un restaurante. Responde a los pedidos de estos clientes usando pronombres. All right. So let's look at the modelo. So here we have Señora Gómez, and she's asking for una ensalada, por favor. So we can say, sí, señora. Enseguida se la traigo. Se la traigo. The se is referring to le, right? A usted. And then la is referring to una ensalada. So we'll just use, to make this activity easy, we'll use this exact same structure, okay? We'll probably have to change these things, but we'll use the sí, señora, or the sí, señor, enseguida, whatever the pronouns are, and then traigo. ¿Vale? All right, here we go. Número 1. So here we have Señora Lugones, and she's asking for el pollo asado, por favor. All right, so pause it and think about it. And we're back, so we'll say, sí, señora, enseguida se lo traigo. Se lo traigo, right? So the se is referring to a usted, the lo is referring to el pollo asado, and the traigo means, I'll bring, right? Okay, muy bien. Número 2. Here we have Señorita Rivas, and she's asking for los camareros. Los camarones, por favor. Pause it. And we're back. Sí, señorita. Enseguida se los traigo. The se again is referring back to Señorita Rivas. Los is referring to los camarones. Y traigo, we already know. Muy bien. 3. Señores López. Señores López. So this is more than one person, right? This is like this must be a couple, right? Because it's plural. Señores. That's what the S-R-E-S, right? Señores López. They're asking for la mantequilla, por favor. Pause it. And we're back and we say, sí, señores. Enseguida se la traigo. Right? The se is referring to a ustedes, which would be les. But we can't have les la, right? So it has to say, turn into se, and the la is referring to mantequilla. Muy bien. Okay, número 4. Tus compañeros de cuarto. So here it's different. Now we're being informal, right? We're being informal, all right? But it's still plural. So keep careful there. They're asking for café. Pause it. And we're back. So we'd say, sí, amigos. Enseguida se lo traigo. Now it's still se here because it's a ustedes, right? Because we're not using vosotros. In theory, you could say os lo traigo, but we're not using vosotros. So it would be se because it would be a ustedes, which is les. And café is masculine, that's why we say lo. So se lo traigo, right? Enseguida. 5. Tu profesor de español. You would probably be formal with them, right? Asking papas fritas. Pause it. You'd say, sí, señor. Enseguida se las traigo. Se las traigo. Las referring to papas. La doctora González is asking for la chuleta de cerdo, por favor. Pause it. And we're back. Sí, señora. Enseguida se la traigo. The la is referring to la chuleta, and it's se because you're being formal. Tu padre. You'd probably be informal here, right? So your padre is asking for los champiñones. You'd say, sí, padre, sí, papá, right? Enseguida te los traigo. Te los traigo. Or if you're being formal with your dad, you'd simply say, se los traigo. All right, last one. 8. Doctor Torres. You'd definitely be formal, so it would be a usted la cuenta, por favor. Pause. Sí, doctor Torres, enseguida se la traigo. Se la traigo. Okay, muy bien. Actividad. So we don't have time to do the entire activity because I can only do these videos in 15-minute segments. So we'll do the first few and then you are going to do the rest on the super site. All right, so let's look at the modelo. It says, no tengo carne. ¿Quién va a traerme la carne del supermercado? And then in parentheses, it tells you who's going to do the action. So you would say, mi esposo va a traérmela, or mi esposo me la va a traer, right? So the la is referring back to the underlined thing. So let's look at número 1. Las invitaciones. ¿Quién les manda las invitaciones a los invitados? That's the question, and the person that's going to do that is mi hija. So pause it. And we're back. So we say, mi hija se las manda a los invitados. Se las manda. The se is referring to les, and the las is referring to las invitaciones. So se las manda a los invitados. Okay? Número 2. No tengo tiempo de ir a la bodega. ¿Quién me puede comprar el vino? Pause. Back. So the person that can do this is mi hijo. So you'd say, mi hijo me lo puede comprar. Because it's el vino is lo. Mi hijo me lo puede comprar. Of course, the other option would be, mi hijo puede comprármelo. That would be the other option. 3. Nos falta mantequilla. ¿Quién nos trae la mantequilla? Pause. We're back. So the person is mi cuñada. So you'd say, mi cuñada nos la trae. Mi cuñada nos la trae. La, of course, referring back to la mantequilla. Ay, no tengo suficientes platos. ¿Quién puede prestarme los platos que necesito? Pause. And we're back, and we hear the person is mi mamá. So we'd say, mi mamá me los puede prestar. Me los puede prestar. So you see you have the me here. I'm just putting in the front, and the los is referring to los platos. You could also attach that to the back, right? Mi mamá puede prestármelos. Mi mamá puede prestármelos. But remember, if you do that, you have to put the accent over this A here. Okay, uno más. Los entremeses. ¿Quién está preparándonos los entremeses? Pause. And we're back. So the people that are doing that are preparing the hors d'oeuvres is Silvia y Renata. So we would say, Silvia y Renata nos los están preparando. Careful there, it would be están, because there's two people. So Silvia y Renata nos, this is here, los, referring to the entremeses, están preparando. Or you could attach that to the end of the preparando, but you have to put the accent. So it would be Silvia y Renata están preparándonoslos. It's kind of a mouth word. Preparándonoslos. Okay, classy, we're out of time, so hopefully this is helpful. You can go back and look at this as many times as you need. Okay, so I recommend you do that. Adios.